they throwing?
That sounds strange. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Metropolitan Planning Organization of Johnson County Urbanized Area Policy Board. It is Wednesday, May 27th at 4:30. We are here in the council chambers at the city of Coralville. Thank you, Coralville, for allowing us to use this facility. Let's go ahead and start with recognizing alternates.
Yeah, I can jump in, Mr. Chairperson. Kent Rawlson, Executive Director. I know we've got Eric Goers here for Mazahir Salih of Iowa City, Troy Kelsey here for Louise Fromm of University Heights, and Mayor Lori Goodrich for Mike Knutson of Coralville. Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to B, which is consider approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting.
Move approval.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the meeting minutes are approved. Item C is go ahead and set the next board meeting date, time, and location, and the proposal is July 15th at the North Liberty City Hall.
Great.
That's correct, and we've actually got our transportation improvement program due on July 15th, which also just happens to be Wednesday, so it works well for us if it works well for the group. And you'll hear a little bit about the TIP tonight as well.
Can I get a motion to set that?
Motion.
I'll second that. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we've set our next meeting day. Next, we get to public discussion of any item not on the agenda. Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Berkey with Iowa Safe Routes to School and the Iowa Bicycle Coalition, and I'm on the Johnson County MPO TTAC Committee as a representative of the Regional Trails Committee and a lot of other things. I don't know if you've heard about these e-bikes or e-motos that is terrorizing our elderly, but we at the Iowa Bicycle Coalition, along with others across the state, are working on a model ordinance that municipalities can adopt so that we have laws and regulations that are approved by cyclists that don't reduce the rights for cyclists to access to roads and trails, and be very helpful if tight-knit communities like Johnson County and others where cities overlap and border have similar, if not the same laws. And so once that model ordinance is done with our board, will be shared with the Johnson County MPO and hopefully can be approved by this group or others. Also, it's been a very successful bike month here in May. Since Safe Routes to School, we've had over 100 schools participate in Bike to School Week, Bike to School Day, including dozens around the county MPO area. And Iowa has ranked 5th for per capita participation nationally 2 years in a row now. But there's still room for growth here in the community where I could still work with the Tiffin Community School District, North Liberty Schools, and anyone else interested. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I have a question, Matt. Does that include sidewalks?
That is up to your city if you want to ban people from having fun on sidewalks. Sidewalks are different according to everywhere and usually not shared. I bet you didn't know in Des Moines that the speed limit for bicycles on the sidewalk is 8 miles an hour, which is very slow on a bike. No one enforces it. And it's not actually used to promote cycling or keep pedestrians safe. Those kinds of laws are just used to punish people if they get hit by a car. You were biking over 8 miles an hour on the sidewalk. It's your fault for being hit by a vehicle. So sidewalk is different than a multi-use trail, is different than a very wide sidewalk, and so that will be up to the regional committee or individual municipalities on how you want to regulate bicycles, e-bikes, scooters, and multimodal transportation on sidewalks. A lot of areas ban them downtown. Iowa City has a bicycle ban downtown in the sidewalk area, as does Grinnell. And so it's up to, I think, your community and what's the sidewalk traffic like? Is it high business area? Is it very condensed, high population? If it isn't, that's for you to decide. And you can always ask us to help evaluate your sidewalks and accessibility for biking.
Yeah, it's a good question, Mayor. So this is something, obviously our MPO is excited about getting a little bit of help. So probably not a week or a month has gone by where we haven't talked with one of you or one of your staffs or even talked at an MPO meeting. I think this came up maybe at our last meeting or a couple meetings ago as well. So we're pretty excited about this. I think locally we've done a really good job in that most of our communities have very similar ordinances, if not the same. There might be a few nuances in there, but very similar. And I suspect that we'll probably all want to or elect to adopt something similar going forward. And Mayor, to your question, I think this is something that we can work through with our Regional Trails and Bicycling Committee. You have staff, all of your staffs are represented there, and then it can work its way up through our technical committee and then come to you all too. Now, obviously, you don't have teeth to adopt it for your individual communities, but I think we can at least work through it at the MPO level and decide what we want to do. And then, if each individual community has their own nuances they want to adopt, I think that's fine. Matt had mentioned downtown Iowa City, in the Ped Mall, Iowa City restricts bikes. Whether we want to continue doing that or not, or whether that's a good idea, that's to be debated. But we're really excited about getting the help because it's just the whole country is in the same position right now. Nobody knows exactly what the right or wrong thing is to do. So excited to work with Matt and his group, and we'll get through it and bring it all to you at a future date.
We appreciate that offer of help, Matt. This is public comment. Is there anyone else with any public comment? Anyone else with any public comment? Anyone else with any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, which is transportation planning. Item 3A, consider a resolution approving the MPOJC fiscal year 2027 transportation planning work program.
Yeah, again, good afternoon. Kent Ralston, Executive Director. Attached in your packet is the final draft of the MPOJC FY27 Transportation Planning Work Program for your review. The work program includes all locally requested projects that we receive from you and your staffs, as well as general projects and procedures that we get from the Iowa DOT, the Federal Transit Administration, as well as the Federal Highway Administration. The projects that we receive from you and your staffs this year are on page 28 of the memo in your packet. And besides being a federal requirement, we largely, of course, use the work program to manage our data collection and our workflow throughout the year. And again, why primarily this is sort of a staff level document, because it's our work program. It also reflects the approved budget that you all approved last January for us. It's in a different format, but it reflects those same numbers. It also includes a breakdown, I think this came up at our last meeting, of staff hours. So it's not staff hours by project, but it is staff hours by type. So we have sort of different divisions, whether it's administrative, whether it's long-range planning, short-range planning, comprehensive planning, and the like. And then it also includes, it shows the funds that we actually receive from the Iowa DOT to complete our work here at the MPO as well. As I always note, we will continue to take requests throughout the year for projects as they come up. And I also always note that if it's a large project that'll disrupt the work program, I'll bring that request to you all before putting significant staff times towards that project. And then I would also add that on page 28, and in the rest of the work program, there's some ongoing projects and some carryover projects. It represents probably a quarter of the work we do or less, to be honest. When we come to your staffs and say, what do you want us to work on for the next year? They don't know what they're going to work on for the next year, so it's hard to answer that question. But it probably represents about a quarter of the work that we'll do in any given year. And then we'll hear from your engineers and your planners, weekly, bi-weekly, and get more requests. So very typical for us. All of that said, at their May 19th meeting just last week, the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee unanimously recommended approval of the work program. And unless there's any questions or comments, I would just ask that you consider approval of the FY27 MPO work program.
I move approval. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Item B is consider approval of a draft MPOJC fiscal year 2027 to 2030 transportation improvement program projects.
Just a second, let me get this pulled up. Is that big enough? Do you want me to make it a little bigger? Okay. All right, good afternoon. Hannah Neal, Associate Transportation Planner. This is our annual Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. The TIP covers the 4-year period of FY 27 to 31, and it includes all federally funded transportation projects for road and transit, and includes state and local projects. Not all projects listed in the TIP will get funded, but in order to be funded, these projects must be in this document. And just as a reminder, projects not under contract automatically roll over. And as you will recall, you award Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG, Transportation Alternative Program, or TAP, and Carbon Reduction Program, or CRP funds every 2 years. And at your March 2025 meeting, you awarded a total of $10.4 million in those STBG funds, $2.1 million in TAP funds, and $3.1 million in CRP funds, to a total of 9 projects. So let's just look through these projects here. There we go. So as we can see here, North Liberty's Dubuque Street Improvements Phase 3 project got roughly $1.7 million in CRP funding programmed in FY 2030. These are just already existing projects. Coralville and Johnson County's Dubuque Street, Northeast, and Forever Green Road Roundabout project got a little over $610,000 in CRP funds. This was initially programmed in FY 26, but it was reprogrammed in FY 27 to match STBG funds that were already programmed in 27. And as you can see, this project also has about $675,000 in STBG funds. Moving on. University Heights Melrose Avenue Complete Streets project was awarded $750,000 in CRP funds in FY 26, and this project rolled into FY 27. That's why it's in this document. And this project also has STBG funds. That's why that federal aid amount is greater than $750,000. Down here, North Liberty. The North Liberty and Coralville Forever Green Road Extension Phase 2 project was awarded about $840,000 in STBG funds programmed in FY 29. Here we go. And we have up next the University of Iowa's Burlington Street Bridge Building Better Connections project. That was awarded roughly $9.5 million in STBG funding programmed in FY 2030. And this project also has a short $430,000 in TAP funding, also programmed in FY 2030. And Iowa City's North Dodge Street Improvements Project, the pedestrian facilities, was awarded roughly $565,000 in TAP funding programmed in FY 27. North Liberty's West Forever Green Road Trail Covered Bridge Road to South Jasper Avenue project was awarded $465,500 in TAP funding programmed also in FY 27. Coralville's North Ridge Trail Connection project was awarded roughly $300,000 in TAP funds programmed in FY 28. And last but certainly not least, Coralville's Iowa River Trail Connection project was awarded a short $350,000 in TAP funds programmed in FY 29. Any discussion on these projects? I know there's kind of a lot on here.
Just going to mention quick, so Hannah mentioned it, but the idea behind this is just to to show you the amount of funding and the appropriate years that are in our transportation improvement program. But this is sort of exciting for us, and I don't know if you noticed it as Hannah was scrolling through, but FY 27 is a huge year. There's a ton of projects stacked up in FY 27, which is exciting. That means there's a ton of federal funding that'll be put out into these projects. And quick, before the meeting, I just kind of tallied up just the MPO funds in the TIP. So what Hannah hasn't been talking about is there's also all the Iowa DOT projects in here, the Interstate 80 projects, the Interstate 380 projects, and those things. But not including those projects, so just the funds that you've all allocated over the years, it's about $40 million. So, and that's all 4 years of the program, but I would say about half of those projects are loaded up in FY27. So we'll see a ton of projects in the next year to 2 years that'll be funded through this organization, which is exciting.
Thank you. Any questions for Hannah?
I just have a general question, and it's probably just a need for a reminder. In the carbon reduction funding,
Yeah.
wasn't there some discussion at one point in the past about the concern of the name of it, or that there would be actually there was some squishiness as far as how much funding was going to continue to be put in that, given the federal administration and the state perspective on that?
Yeah.
Can you just remind me of?
Yeah,
what's
no,
going
your
on with that?
memory is correct. And I think there was quite a bit of concern just in that the current administration wouldn't be take kindly, I guess, to the environmental aspect of this, when what we've seen is there hasn't been any issues. So
Right.
whatever our concerns were so far have been not valid, I guess, but yeah. So right now, we're just forging ahead. We also talked about years ago, too, is trying to get these funds out the door as quick as we could and not holding them back. So we've tried to get those carbon reduction funds programmed. They're in here now. They're all spent, so to speak, which is a good thing, I think, for this very
Yeah.
conversation. But so far, so good.
I'm glad it's one hoop they didn't stick in front of us to jump through.
Right.
So thank
right.
you.
And I think the sort of the local approach was not talk about it too much. And I think that was sort of and I think the Iowa DOT had the same approach. It was just let's
Just
you know,
do the
ask for
stuff.
forgiveness later kind of thing, and just not talk about it now. And whether that helped or not, I don't know. But
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Hannah?
Yeah, Hannah, would you be able to, this is just a formatting thing, would you be able to provide this information, like broken down by jurisdiction? These are great things for our councils to know. Our staff knows them, but there are certain members of our elected body that don't see this stuff, so
Yeah.
it would just make my life easier if I didn't have to make that spreadsheet myself.
yeah, no, we'll do that and that's part of the reason why we want to get this in front of you too, because it's exciting for us. These are funds you've allocated, and like I said, it's about $40 million over the next 4 years. So, and that's just the MPO funds, not all the DOT funds. That doesn't include earmarks that are in here that some of your communities have received for projects, and that doesn't include special like bridge funds and some of the other things that are in the TIP. But we'll break it down just for MPO funds for each community, and we'll make sure you all get that. Yeah.
Yep, not a problem.
Any more questions? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Oh, Rod, I've got some transit projects.
Oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself.
That is a nice break, but
I was so busy with the construction that
it is
Okay, sorry.
very exciting. I'll keep the transit projects quick. We won't go through all 11 pages of it. Transit portion of the TIP includes operating funding and projects from the transit program of projects, which you saw at your last meeting. That's kind of the transit wish list, if you will. Mainly includes buses and equipment replacement, as well as facilities funding for all three of our transit agencies. As we know, Iowa City Transit is gearing towards getting a new building. CANBUS is doing some updates and renovations, and Coralville still asks for money for their facility as well, for future updates. So buses are usually replaced at about an 85% federal funding level. Coralville has included 16 buses, 7 of which are replacement and 9 of which are expansion buses. Iowa City has included 25 buses, all of which are replacement, and CANBUS has included 24 buses, all of which are replacement buses. And I think this really speaks to the state of our fleets and just the importance of asking for these funds so that we can make sure that our fleets are as good as possible. The draft 27 to 30 TIP will be submitted to the Iowa DOT for review by June 15th. And as Kent said, the final due date is July 15th. And the MPO will begin the public input process for approval of the final TIP for that July 15th deadline. The Transportation Technical Advisory Committee unanimously recommended approval of this item at their May 19th meeting. So today, we are asking for approval of the draft FY27 to 30 MPOJC TIP projects list. I can answer any questions at this time. Yeah, I'm done.
And sorry about that. I have one.
Yeah.
Last I knew, buses were it was taking a really inordinate amount of time to fill bus orders.
Yes.
So can you first of all tell us kind of what that time frame is, and second of all, what's that doing to the cost if the order is actually not getting filled for 3 years or 2.5 years or whatever it is?
Yeah, my understanding is that lead time is anywhere from like 1 to 2 years, depending on the bus. And of course, you can imagine in that time the cost does go up, and that's the unfortunate reality that we live in. I know that Iowa City just put in an order for a lot of buses. I think Coralville also has recently. CAMBUS just got a few, I think, light-duty buses. So these amounts may change, but the transit side of the TIP is not fiscally constrained in the same way that the infrastructure side is. So with the long project list that I just mentioned, that's money that you all voted for those specific projects. That's like set money, whereas the transit side, as we've said before, is more of like a wish list. And so we're not necessarily, even as prices rise, like that's not end all be all.
Yeah, I think Hannah's right with the time frames and sort of what it's taking. And I'll get this wrong, but at the technical advisory committee meeting last week, Coralville, I think, is getting something like 6 or 8 new buses, Iowa City the same, and CAMBUS the same. I think all 3 fleets, and I'm going to get this wrong, but they are all getting multiple new buses in the next year or two, which, again, to Hannah's point, stands to where we're at with our current fleet and its aging and that sort of thing. The other thing I would say, and this, depending on sort of what side of the fence you're on, is maybe not a good thing, but to our earlier conversation with Megan about the administration, most of those buses, or I shouldn't say most of those buses, a large portion of those buses were going to be electric, and they will no longer be electric. They will now be some sort of hybrid bus, and that's because the administration just was not pushing our bus purchases and our funding through until it was changed to some kind of hybrid vehicle. So the fuel type has changed on all the electric vehicles, I believe is true, except for maybe a few of the smaller, lighter duty vehicles. But all the heavy-duty buses that were going to be electric, I think it's safe to say, will now be some kind of hybrid. Still a good thing, but to the question about cost, the cost has actually come down, I think, on some of those vehicles because the fully electric vehicles were more expensive than the hybrid vehicles. I think I'm correct in saying that.
Yep.
I had one question, now it's 2. So what does it mean by a hybrid fuel then? What is a hybrid bus?
Right.
Electric.
So, sorry, Hannah. So
It's
when
a
we,
combination of electric and another fuel?
correct.
Diesel.
Okay, diesel.
Yep. So much like a hybrid personal vehicle would be, I think, Mayor. Yeah.
That's where I started, but I didn't know if that
Yep,
was-
and I think there's different types, and I'm not an expert on all the different types, but there are, but yes, they would be some sort of hybrid vehicle, which I think we can all agree would be better than a fully diesel vehicle.
They all will be.
All of the ones that would have been electric will be, yeah, and I'd have to go through the TIP and actually count up which ones have changed, but I don't believe any of the heavy-duty buses that were fully electric will be purchased as fully electric, if that made sense. So, yeah, so whatever was electric will now be hybrid. Yep.
Then my other question, not related to fuel type, is while this is a wish list, how much has this been in years past from what you've seen? Like, we put a wish list out there for 4 years, all of these buses, how many of them actually make it through percentage-wise?
So there's a method the DOT uses, and basically you come up on the list, and I don't know exactly how that works, Mayor, but there's a list of vehicles, and when you're up on the list, you basically say, yes, we want them, or no, we don't want them, because there's, of course, the local match as well. I think we have not fared well in the last 6, 8, 10 years, which is why our vehicle fleet's so old, which is now why we're getting all these new vehicles. So, but I think it's fair to say that we've not been excluded, or there's been no, nefarious things going on. It's just that everyone is in the same boat as we are with aging vehicles. So everyone wants those buses when they can get them. So I think we just waited our turn, and now it's, like I said, Coralville, Iowa City, and CAMBUS all sounded like they were in really good shape as far as the TAC meeting last week. Yep.
And some of those items are recurring things like replacement parts or things like that. And so that's fulfilled, but it stays on.
Yep, and then just to clarify too, and that's what Hannah had mentioned earlier, where the infrastructure side, it is whatever is in the TIP is the exact dollar amount and the exact year it's programmed. The transit project side of things really is more of a wish list because we have to have these projects listed this way. So when we come up on the list, we can say, yep, that vehicle we knew needed replaced, and now we can basically receive the money and put in the order for a new bus. If you're not prepared for that and you don't have your vehicles in the TIP, then you will not get those buses, and they'll skip right by you and go on to the next community. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting how the two sides are really not, I mean, it makes sense once you think about it, but it's a little hard sometimes to get your head wrapped around and work in these two completely different worlds.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, seeing none, I'll now entertain that motion.
So moved.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to consider approval of the draft MPOJC fiscal year 2027 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Program projects. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, moving on, item C on our agenda is to update the MPOJC Public Participation Plan revision process.
Thanks, Hannah Neal, Associate Transportation Planner. Again, this is just an update. We're not asking for approval at this time. So a public participation plan, or PPP, is a document designed to formalize the public input process used by MPOs in their planning processes. Each major planning document developed by MPOJC has specific requirements for public input, which vary depending on the governing body requiring the work. So the state might have a different set of requirements than the feds, for example. MPOJC last adopted a PPP in 2022, and federal guidelines recommend that the plan be updated every 5 years, which is why we're updating it now. The draft MPOJC PPP is consistent with federal and state regulations and stipulates minimum requirements for providing residents and stakeholders with reasonable opportunity for input in the planning process. The plan formalizes the planning policies used by MPOJC and encourages public participation and communication with member communities. Basically, this plan outlines the MPOJC public input process, including outreach strategies, outlets to notify the public, our list of public input organizations, and procedural notices and processes for our public participation plan, the long-range transportation plan, our transportation improvement program, the passenger transportation plan, and the transportation planning work program. As required by the adopted plan, a 45-day notice for public input will be published regarding the revision process regarding this document that we're updating right now. Staff intends to present the revised plan to you all in July for your approval. So this is just kind of a heads up and an update on what we're doing. This PPP is similar to the previous plan. No substantive changes have been made, but that being said, if you have feedback, please reach out to staff. So again, this is just an informational update, and we're not asking for approval at this time, but feel free to reach out with questions, comments, concerns. That's all
I
I have.
actually have a question.
Yeah.
On the 45-day notice, I mean, that's for the public as well. What are the means for the public to both access and provide feedback?
It'll be published on the MPOJC website. We will also have a hard copy in our office if people prefer that, and we'll be sending out a press release in the Press Citizen and the Gazette, and we will also be doing a web release, like a web press release, so it'll be available that way, and people can come in at any point during that 45-day public comment period and provide input. Or if they want to email, I think my email and or phone number is also included in there, so there are several ways to contact.
When you've done this in the past, have you gotten decent feedback?
I think last time we had, there was some input from a committee member, but generally we have not received a lot of public engagement, which I think Kent will agree is pretty typical for the planning process across all of our plans.
Yeah. That's true, and if you have your packet in front of you, on page 11 of the draft plan, it has a chart that kind of outlines what we do for which one of our products. Like Hannah mentioned, some of those are required by our federal partners, some of those are just things we do. I would agree with Hannah. Generally speaking, we struggle, right? And it's just, we've done a lot better job with some of our younger staff. This isn't something I'm very good about with like social media campaigns and that sort of thing that we're doing a lot better job with. But I think just getting people to engage is kind of a struggle, and I'm sure you all feel that with some of your plans and procedures as well for your communities. But we do the best we can. The things that we typically get, I think, the most feedback on are bicycle and pedestrian plans and that sort of thing. Our long-range plan to some degree. But when we get into like our transportation improvement program that we all just discussed and those kind of things, it's nearly impossible.
Sure. Yeah, I was just
As-
wondering if there would be any anything gained as far as getting feedback by doing, I mean, again, they're not always well attended when we do listening posts, but something where you actually are like going
Right.
to people, just,
Yep.
put the ice cream stands sign up and say, hey, we're here, at
Yep.
the library on a weekend or something, and publicize it, just people walking by.
Yeah,
What
that's
is
a good
this?
idea. And we're doing it like currently right now with our long range plan, which you'll hear a little bit more about later tonight. We've been doing a ton of that this year, and with varied success, I think. But yeah, it's more fun doing that than
Right.
some of the social media posts and other
Yeah.
things at least.
Well,
so.
and I say this about talking about feedback without having provided you with any, so.
Well,
me.
yeah. Well, now's the time. We've got 45 days. So
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, this is just an update, so I guess we don't need any action on that. So we will go ahead and move on. Then, was there any other questions for Hannah before? Okay, let's move on to item D then, which is an update on the MPOJC Long Range Transportation Plan revision process.
Hi, Sarah Wallace, Associate Transportation Planner with the MPO. So we're in that process now of gathering public input, or we have been for the last few months, I guess. And now we are going to be bringing various chapters of the long-range plan to you. This is not complete, what I'm bringing you, but I'm bringing you the chapter that is the regional context. And what you have before you is portions of the chapter that are not included here will be completed later as part of the transportation demand model that's being developed by Emily and Madeline. And so what we have here tonight is the data we've collected thus far that reflects changes in population, demographics, wages and income, land use, housing construction, vehicle miles traveled, things like that. Some of this information contributes to the transportation demand model, while other information included helps us to identify future transportation challenges or needs or opportunities. The information in the regional context chapter contributes to our understanding of growth patterns, development trends, and the travel demand that will justify transportation projects and policies of the future. Most staff and elected officials spend a lot of time, maybe not the county would be a little different, but we think about our own communities where we live and work. And the regional context chapter gives you an opportunity to step back and think regionally to see what's going on beyond the boundaries of your own municipality. And with each long-range plan, we see ebbs and flows and patterns of expansion and contraction or stabilization. So think of what happened after the slow growth after the 2008 housing crisis and recession, or the standstill that we experienced with COVID, and we're just coming out of that. So with that in mind, we thought we would point out some things that we think are most interesting and in some cases surprising in the data. So we'll start out with population. According to the 2024 American Community Survey, our metro area population, so that's the 5 communities, Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty, Tiffany, University Heights, we'd have about 15% growth, with most of that growth being in the northern portion of the metro. So in the pie chart that was in your handout, 63% of the population in 2024, in 2019, 63% of the metro population was in Iowa City. And now in 2024, we see that that's gone down a bit. This has shifted out of Iowa City, where we're now at 60% of the metro area population, as shown here. And there's been growth in North Liberty and in Tiffin, principally. And so thinking about population growth by community, so overall the metro grew by over 16,000 people since that last plan, or since 2015, and 57% of the growth most recently has been in North Liberty and Tiffin. In your packet, that graphic sort of got cut off, but it's North Liberty and Tiffin accounted for most of the growth. So that chart there shows the individual population growth in each of those communities. And then you can see that yellow line is the percentage growth. So you see Tiffin growing by over 140%. Then we look at, one of the things that we look at is the metro area share of households with children. So those are households that have children under the age of 18. And here again, the metro-wide change in share of households. At the time of the last long-range plan, 51% of households with children under 18 were in Iowa City. By 2024, this has shifted. Iowa City now accounts for 46% of the households, the metro area households with children, as shown in the pie chart. And then we look at community. We look at the composition of communities in the table, and Iowa City, although Iowa City has twice the number of households with children as any other metro community, those households make up a smaller share of Iowa City's overall population, and that makes sense because of our large population of university students. But you can see that, the other communities, almost a quarter of their population or a third of their population is households with children, and so that will just change demands in those communities. And then the thing that's most striking is the growth again in Tiffin, that the share of households with children in Tiffin has consistently gone up over every 5-year period, basically doubling. And then we look at the change in share of metro area school-age children. So separate from the households with children, these are where are the individual children. And you can see again that growth over each of those 5-year time bands, and those changes again doubling in Tiffin for that metro area share. And Coralville and North Liberty sort of swapping places, and then just a little bit of decline in Iowa City. So North Liberty saw a 50% increase from 2014 to 2024, a 50% increase in children ages 5 to 17, while Tiffin school-age population tripled. Although not shown in this chart, the population of children under age 5 declined in Iowa City and North Liberty during this same time period, but grew by 46% in Coralville and by more than 230% in Tiffin. So that's quite a change. And then overall age composition otherwise, we tend to focus a lot on the school-age children and then the university population. You can see that wide band of 20 to 24-year-olds in the metro area. But our population in the metro area of residents over 65 years of age has grown 90% since 2014. And the share of metro population that is 65 and over has increased from 10 to 15%. So that will make for some different demands in transportation as well.
You said that was from 2014 to present?
Yep. Or no, this is the current, this is the, what I was talking about, yes, 2014
With seniors,
to present.
the 90%?
Yep. This table, I just wanted to point out, we include in the plan is the employment and annual wage by industry. That red line that's sort of running through it is looking at the percentage of jobs that fall into that category. This data is for the metropolitan statistical area, which is different than the metro area. It basically includes Johnson and Washington counties, but that gives us an idea. Most of those jobs would be in the metro area and gives us an idea of what wages look like. It's important to keep in mind that even though that employment is in our area, the people who hold those jobs aren't necessarily from the metro area or from Johnson and Washington counties. And then the median wages, we can look at those. Johnson County and state are listed below. Obviously, Iowa City and Coralville have lower median household incomes. That's somewhat influenced, obviously, from the large university student population. The two things that stood out that were striking here were the growth in median income in Tiffin and University Heights, sort of opposite ends of the spectrum, Tiffin being a more suburban type of community, and then the University Heights, a very contained community with close proximity to the university and university hospitals. So sort of striking that those two stood out in that way. We also look at metro area building permits issued in each community, and that goes into some detail in the table that's in your packet. What was most interesting in the most recent data was the leveling out of development across the metro area since 2019. The tables that are and the graphs that are in there show a long view of changes in home construction. There's more than 15 years of data there. And we can see that leveling out in actual numbers and in the share of building permits in the last 5-year interval, with Iowa City having about 1/3 of the permits issued and the other communities 1/5 to 1/4 of the permits. Again, the most striking change would be in Tiffin. So Tiffin is right up there with the share in the metro area, comparable to what's in Iowa City, Coralville, and North Liberty. And then just a little bit to show you the difference between the over time from 2010 in the number of permits issued for single family versus multifamily. And then kind of showing you what's happened over time between all the communities in that gray area that you see here. These are total permits issued, and you can see sort of the communities sort of all coming together and leveling out. The next area in the regional context is the vehicle miles traveled. And again, a leveling off here. You can see in the charts that overall our VMT remains lower than in pre-pandemic levels and has not increased since the rebound experienced in 2021. So we're sort of flattened out to lower. Iowa City and Coralville and the University Heights have had negative VMT growth since 2021. And then I wanted to point out here a couple of things. You'll notice that in the bicycle row here, all those NAs, the ACS does not collect that information. Any bicycle commuters would be under taxi cab, motorcycle, or other means. So we don't have that information through the ACS. But the striking number here is obviously people who worked from home. So 13.5% of metro area workers now work for home. That increase was experienced in all of the metro area communities. In our last long-range plan, 3.9% of workers metro-wide worked from home, and now it's 13.47%, so that's more than a 300% increase. And so what does that mean? I don't think we fully know right now, but it does signal, it may signal a major structural shift with significant implication for land use and travel demand. This trend can lead, in reviewing some of the literature, it can lead to more off-peak travel and reduced use and travel demand. It may lead to reduced congestion during traditional peak commuting hours. It may ease strain on transportation infrastructure. Those are all good things. But increased work from home can also have other effects. It may contribute to greater urban sprawl and more economic segregation. So those are all things that we'll just have to see play out over time. This is not in your packet, but we're still working through this, but we just want to we always want to call your attention to metro area commuting patterns, the way that people live in one community and work in another. And so part of the purpose of this organization, is that cooperation, because we have people that live and work, in various, they don't necessarily work where they live. And of course, in particular, 34% of workers living in Johnson County commute to other counties for work, most commonly Lynn County, but really all over the state of Iowa. 45% of workers employed in Johnson County commute here from other counties, and again, principally from Lynn County, but from all over. So just some things to kind of get you out of your own community and thinking more regionally. And as noted in the memo, we'll be coming back to you in July with more chapters and information gleaned from our surveys. So in terms of public participation, we've had the general survey that's gone out. We've had several hundred responses to that. We also put out survey signs out on the regional and some of the local trails and have a few hundred responses to those surveys. So, and we also did surveys that were just, well, we tried to get the schools to respond. We got good response from Liberty High School, City High, and Southeast Middle School. Very good response. So we'll be looking at what young people are telling us about their travel needs.
I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask about this. First of all, I love data. This is really interesting to me. And I feel like Councilor Alter and I have both just gone through a series of this actually with the Iowa City Comprehensive Plan process, where it's ACS data, but of course sliced differently, specifically for Iowa City, not for the whole region. And we're nearing the end of that process. I'm curious how much coordination there is with metropolitan planning and each individual city's comprehensive plans, because eventually this data, there's going to be spots where it coordinates and places where it's discoordinate, and it would be helpful to sort of flag those so we know where transportation regionally might conflict with our individual cities' comp plans. Is that a process that happens automatically, or is that something that we should be forcing?
I guess I was going to say the projects that each community brings forth, those are things that are based on your comprehensive plan. So in that way, those things come to us. I don't know how our plan will.
Yeah, I mean,
get
I'm
back
just
to the
thinking
comprehensive.
our new comp plan will certainly move towards more density in a slightly different way of thinking, and it's going to be different probably than the other communities.
Right.
And I'm interested to know how this regional long-range plan acknowledges the different attitudes of the different communities and how you address that.
Yeah. That's a good question. I think it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg, because it depends on, right, like Iowa City's working on your comprehensive plan now, which is the first update in 10 years, and skip 10, 15 years, whatever it might be. And we're updating ours every 5 years. So you kind of have, and Coralville may have done theirs. I'm not sure when Coralville's last one was. So everybody's kind of working on these different time frames. I think the good news for us is we have to do ours every 5 years. So regardless of sort of where everybody else is at, I mean, we're able to review your comp plans, which we do, and then to the best of our ability kind of mesh those things together. Part of what's also in our long-range plan, you'll see our land use maps. So we have existing land use maps and future land use maps, and like the future land use map would be based on your comprehensive plan. Right. So again, timing is key there, but I'd say there's a pretty good amount of overlap. And then also specific to Iowa Cities, I review yours as the transportation planner, so I'm doing that currently. So so there's just different levels. Okay. But yeah, I think they're pretty well coordinated.
Do you make notes for our councils, like when there are points that are disparate, or is that? Or for this organization, I'm just curious what that process looks like when they don't line up. Because I'm familiar with it within the context of our comprehensive plan, where we have multiple comprehensive plans and amendments that are not coordinated perfectly, and it's problematic for us. And this is yet another plan we would be adding, a long-range plan that might not work. So.
Yeah, I think the short answer is we probably don't. Yeah, okay. I mean, or we haven't actually done that, but we probably should. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I
mean, they're looking at different things, but they are definitely related. I mean, insofar as the land uses and things, they're very related. So, yeah.
I mean, I would hope that the various comprehensive plans in the communities are looking at where people are commuting to, like an awareness of that.
Yeah.
Well, and I would also say that I would hope that I'm guessing that everyone hires a consultant to do their comprehensive plan, just a hunch, but. Also, those consultants should be looking at our long-range plan, and I know that Confluence has. Right. They're looking at our existing plan since we're working on ours now. So yeah, I think there's a fair amount of coordination, but no, I don't think that the MPO has gone in and said, this is where we have disagreements or things that are overlapping.
And I think it's safe to say that they've never lined up. I mean, each community's had its own vision and its own style, and its own decision-making, and so to the extent that they've lined up, it's been MPO making sure the roads connect.
Yeah. Well, that's
After that, it's,
And
Yeah.
trails, yeah.
yeah.
And that's a good point, and that's the interesting thing about transportation planning, and I always tell people is, it's probably one of the very few things that your communities do that aren't just your own, right? You have your own libraries. Emergency response might be one of those that overlaps a little bit. You've got your own water plants, you've got your own sewer plants, you've got your own police departments. Everything is sort of insular. But when it comes to transportation planning, we have to do this or we get really bad results. So
Sure.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. The second question I had is you focused quite a bit on households with children, and I'm curious from a transportation planning perspective how that impacts. Maybe I'm just having a lack of imagination.
From a transportation planning perspective and a personal perspective, I think it impacts transportation massively. There are much more demands on families to get people different places at different times. Like just if you think of all the activities with children, everything from doctor's visits, daycare, school, kids are going
There's
in
more
various
commuting
directions.
happening with-
Right. So there's going to be not just personal vehicles, but where transit is going, where hopefully the school district, where school buses are going, things like that. I mean, children generate an immense amount of travel demand.
And for us, it's the mode, right? So children, they're not driving if they're under 16, presumably. So for us, it's a good way to try and get them to the places they want to go, not just schools, but, and that's one of the surveys we do is just asking them, how would you like to get to where you go? And if you're not getting there and using that mode, why? Is it that your parents won't let you? Is it that, the facility isn't there, you feel unsafe? And then we can start to kind of unwind things and try and figure out how we can make the communities better, for those populations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And the same then, different because it's a smaller population that doesn't have the same kind of needs. But with, an elderly population, you have more people who may be limited in the ways that they can travel. They may not be able to travel as independently, but they also have needs. So I guess you're looking at the two ends of the spectrum are the areas where people have vastly different needs than those of us who are of an age where, and an ability where we can choose to drive, we can choose to take transit,
Sarah, do you remember what the statistic is of folks that cannot drive, the Anna Zevart thing? Do you recall what it is?
I don't remember, but it's
So
dramatic.
long as
Yeah.
Sarah and I actually attended a discussion about a woman that wrote a book here a while back that is actually legally blind and can't drive. She wrote a book. Long story short, I'll get the statistic wrong, but it's something like, I think it's 1 in 6, I think.
Something like that.
That are of driving age that cannot drive for one reason or another. So, I mean, there's just this huge population that a lot of us are maybe unaware of. We don't have those folks in our families, or we don't have them yet if they're aging and that sort of thing. So those are all things we're trying to take into account.
Just a few years ago, 4 of the 9 Supreme Court justices had never driven.
Right?
Wow.
Kind of an interesting stat.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Probably lived in communities where they didn't have to.
They had a lot of transit.
Yeah.
Did you have another question, Megan?
I just had a really, sort of winding it back with the feedback. How many different, when you put the surveys out, were they in different languages? What were they?
They were in English.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
So the last thing I would say about this is just, we bring this to, and it's kind of like, well, why is this here? We always start with the demographic information because for us, it's really exciting. And like Sarah mentioned, I think we all kind of know what happens in our communities and we think we have a feel for it. I think we all agree just Tiffin's growing fast, right? We can tell. But like, how fast is it growing?
Yeah.
What population is it? And how does that affect our transportation system? I mean, that's really what we're trying to dig into. So as we move forward with our modal chapters that Sarah mentioned that you'll be seeing, like without this information, it's sort of like, well, are we right or are we wrong, right? And it's kind of like a smell test, and then we can look back at some of this information and say, this makes perfect sense, right? When we start to see like VMT, overall vehicle miles traveled is down in Iowa City. Well, we can start looking at like the fare-free transit and all those kind of things and start to like think through it and see if it makes sense. Because really there's no one else but us to say if it's right or wrong, right? I mean the facts are the facts, but outside of that, when we talk about our policies and programs and procedures, it's like, are we hitting the nail on the head, or are we out here doing something we really shouldn't be doing? So anyway, it kind of helps us guide us, and then we can really wrap our heads around what we're seeing in the communities and decide if it's true or not.
Any other questions for Sarah? Well, I would urge you folks too, the MPO staff, if we start to discuss things that are not matching up with the data, to call us on it. Because I know that can happen too. Okay, next item on our agenda is update the MPOJC Safe Streets and Roads for All Safety Action Plan.
Yeah, you may recall that a couple of years ago, MPOJC was awarded a Safe Streets and Roads for All SS4A grant to create a safety action plan for the community, for our communities. And by adopting the plan, the urbanized area communities become eligible for implementation grants to correct issues that may contribute to serious and fatal collisions on our roadways. There are also other grants through the state that if you have a corridor or an intersection that's listed in the plan as a priority, that will help you in getting grants. So for the past 9 months, MPO staff and representatives of our member communities and local advocacy groups have been working with HDR, who is our chosen consultant, to develop the safety action plan. At your April 1st meeting, HDR presented its metro-wide safety analysis. And since then, we have been working with members of the community, and we're kind of winding through the final phase of that. Earlier today, HDR met with us and with representatives from Tiffin. Yesterday, it was Iowa City. Tomorrow, I think, will be North Liberty and Coralville, and University Heights is soon behind that. So we're getting to that final phase, and then a draft plan will be to you by July 1st. We have a virtual open house that is now live at MPOJCSS4A.com, where the public can review the process up to this point. And I should say earlier on in the process, members of anyone could go on and drop a pin in any one of the member communities and identify an issue. And so those were taken into consideration in the plan. And many of those were issues that could be easily resolved. So we forwarded those things out to communities right away as well. So just be looking forward to that. You should be seeing something at your July meeting, a draft of the plan.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Looks like we've reached the end of our agenda. Is there any other business from the group? Any other business? Any other business? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Ruby?